Okay, real quick story about Easter. Most of our ancient cults were fertility cults, spreading their seed, trying to. Actually, we just do a lot better when we nurture one another and we live together than we do on our own, so it's natural. But I'm not going to go into the whole sex part of it because it gets really kind of crazy, some of the stuff that they were doing. But Easter is confusing for a lot of people. But here again, if you know anything about mushrooms and ethnomycology, and a little bit about astrology or astrotheology and what the sun's doing, naturally the Passover and Easter is celebrated close. The sun is passing over the equator. Days become longer in the northern hemisphere, in a sense redeeming, bringing growth back to the vegetations. But it also is, that's the Passover celebration. But you can also look at it as quite often, and I've observed this myself, a full moon or the full moon will be born under Virgo Easter morning. It doesn't always happen, but it happens quite often. And that full moon was like the moon goddess, the egg, or Ishtar, is where we get Easter from. And it's also a great time to go out and harvest mushrooms while they're still in their kind of early growth cycles, when they're in these little round balls, and they're extremely colorful, and they're hidden right around the base of the trees of mystery, the five trees of mystery, which are the evergreens. And even the oak trees, there's a doorway in the valley of the oak trees. You can get mushrooms there too, and of course you can get your bread rations out of the cattle stone, or your manna. But the priest class or the shamans or the leaders of the tribes would send the children out to collect these at this time. In the winter, it was left to the shaman and the reindeer. I'll explain that in another video, because it's a little more difficult to find them in the snow. But in the springtime, you'd send the kids out with baskets. And then, of course, they'd bring it back to the shaman or the priest, and he would go sort them out. And he'd give some, there's so many mushrooms that are just good to eat. He'd give them, he'd take the poison ones out, and then they'd probably more than likely keep the magi mushrooms, or the magic mushrooms, the mushrooms of the magi, or the magicians, or the wise men, or whatever. You could see now, mushrooms were so exonerated by cultures back then that they even dressed like them. Early Jewish and Israeli priests, they have these mushroom caps on, and they prepared all the burnt offerings, which is like the food. So when you see chef's hats today and they have mushroom caps on, it goes way back to that. And those guys were responsible for preparing the food to keep everybody safe. They knew certain types of animals could spread disease, so they'd avoid them if they weren't cooked properly. Everything had to be kosher, man. Even the Islamic cults and anybody's wearing those turbans on their head. It's a direct association to the ancient mushroom cults. It's no wonder, like when you look at a mosque and it looks like a giant mushroom, or any of the temples that look like giant mushrooms, and then you walk into them, and the tile work is like one of the most psychedelic experiences you can experience when you walk into those places. I would love to have a mosque to myself and do some mushrooms in there and just look at all that beauty, because it looks like they're trying to describe a direct experience in there often. But it goes for so many cultures. That's why the domes are shaped the way they are, and the doorways are shaped the way they are. Getting a little off track. So one of the most important things that you can recognize in our historical art that pops us all around us, that links us back to our past, is fountains. Like you see my little bird bath right there? It's shaped like a mushroom. Most bird baths, fountains, goblets, cups, grails, all that stuff is shaped like growth stages of a mushroom. Easter eggs, same thing. So some of these drugs will arouse us, so they can be used for fertility and sex, cult and sex activities. But often, if there wasn't enough to go around, this is where it gets weird. When you see a little boy peeing into a fountain, it's usually just a child peeing into the top of a mushroom in its grail stage and its cup stage. And basically, I think maybe this is why altar boys were kept around to alter the consciousness. But they would feed this to a child. You could get a small little dose to a child, not enough to affect them psychologically or even anything, but when it comes out of their urine, some of these mushrooms that have like muscimol and ibotenic acid and stuff, it comes out way stronger out of the liver. And that ties into the flying reindeer story that I'll make in another video. But so Easter has to do with ethnomycology and all that stuff. As far as our stories that we're taught, we're supposed to grow up and understand these things. The reason that these stories are handed down for generations through families is that one day the wise man's going to catch on. Some kid's going to go, oh, I know what all this stuff means. This makes sense to me. And then maybe you can teach somebody about it. But these stories are, and these similar stories, I'm not going to try to do cross-reference all the religions, but when you do, you'll find very similar stories that tie in all together about the same kind of usage of these things. So I think that's all I wanted to say about Easter. There's much more to the topic. It could go on and on and on. But have a great day, people. Take care.